Hello and welcome to another episode of Shh, Don't Tell My Mom. Today we are joined with Heather Hundhausen. And she is a healer and a Renaissance woman. She has many skills. I am so happy to know her in real life, and I'd love you to talk about what you're up to right now, Heather.
What I'm up to right now, that's what you want to know about? So as a professional, I started out studying psychology and English because I'm fascinated with humans, and I actually ended up putting my hands on people as a licensed massage therapist 20 years ago, and realized that there's more to people than just pain patterns, that they interact with each other and carry each other's pain. And so I went and got my master's in mental health and marriage and family. And then I learned somato-emotional release and craniosacral therapy, and started working with people on like releasing pain out of their body. And as I did that, began a coaching program for people, which is really about self-love and empowerment. And started with like teaching women how to love themselves and take care of themselves. And then somehow I ended up with a bunch of men in my practice. And then before you know it, I had like strippers and dominatrixes and people in non-monogamous and open relationships, like lots and lots of them. I was attracting them everywhere. And so the focus of coaching has become, I like using that sexual creative energy to support people in creating, because a lot of people are looking for like, what's my purpose, or, where do I belong in the world? But many of us are taught that sexuality is something to be ashamed of. So I like to dig into it, and I'll ask questions like, what does your heart want? What does your gut want? What does your pussy want? And I get people really in touch with their whole body. And so that's what I've been up to professionally for the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah. So as I wanted to convey to the audience, that you're up to a lot of things, that you have a vast amount of knowledge, and have been exposed to many different styles of relationships. Do you see any overarching themes with your life coaching work where people have similar issues?
Oh, yeah, I mean, everybody has similar issues. I would say that what makes me a good coach, or what makes somebody a good coach, is like I say, that I've been to hell and back. And so I'm willing to go to hell and back with you. So I've done a lot of personal development. Like my personal story is, I was raised in a alcoholic home with a father who was like a rageaholic and controller. And he like taught me ways of being in relationship that are effective, but I don't think are in integrity. And so as I've been exploring this whole realm of what does it mean to be a dominatrix, I've been able to use a lot of those teachings, that my dad taught me growing up. Does that answer the question?
So your dad's a dominatrix?
My dad is like a super controller, and my dad was like, hey, this is how you manipulate men with your sexuality in order to get what you want, including money. Like as a kid, like he taught me how to walk in heels. He taught me how to get what I want, how to attract men, like all of that stuff.
Was your mother there when you were a child?
My mother was there as a child too. My mother was like a trophy wife, really, really beautiful.
Okay.
Fun, outgoing, hat wearing, loud color wearing, laughing, like you couldn't miss her. She would walk in the room and people would literally, like, she was absolutely gorgeous.
Wow, it's interesting to see like you as an adult now looking at your father and your mother's relationship, and seeing this controlling person controlling your mother.
Trying, but my mother was incredibly independent. My grandfather actually called her a wild stallion that you couldn't tame. And my dad thought he could tame her. couldn't. So I had two very controlling, very powerful parents who neither could control the other.
Got it. So it was like a sort of like a wrestling match.
It was like a wrestling match, or
Who's
it
on
was
top?
like fireworks or explosions, bombs. It
Intense.
was intense, that's for sure.
Um,
You
Now,
weren't expecting that.
well, I'm trying to like link. You just try to make.
Don't tell my mom.
Trying to link the that relationship, I guess, with how you are developing currently.
Well, so this is interesting, right? So I became like a super good codependent good girl, right? So I spent my childhood like, let's go to church, and I was like really Christian, praying a lot, and like I was trying to find something to hold on to that felt real. So like my spirituality started really young. And because I became such a good codependent and good people pleaser, I ended up in relationships where I wanted to be controlling and dominant because that's what was modeled for me, but also wanting to be this people pleaser who took care of everybody because that was my role as a child. So it's very confusing to like figure out like, how do I be this powerful woman? Like, I like to be in control of my life. I like it a lot, but I also like to surrender to God. So it's an interesting dynamic. And then in relationship, I was incredibly controlling in a lot of my relationships before I did any personal development, and it was emasculating. So I would actually take my partner's power from them and be like, I'm in charge. And I didn't know I was doing that. It was all very like subconscious. So when I started learning that, people don't like that it's very disempowering. And I started to learn, okay, how do I empower someone? I actually went from like this side of being super controlling, nagging, and critical, like all the way to this side, which was like submissive and passive, and you can do whatever you want to me. And I became like a doormat. Right. So I went from one side to the other, and I was also exploring like the masculine and the feminine aspect at the same time. Because there's a dynamic, men are driving and they're, pounding. And, if you're looking at 10 million years of like mitochondria that's living inside of a man body with testosterone, this is a mammoth killer. This is a strategy planner. They're logical. They stand side by side against the enemy, right? And so there's a big part of me that's like that. But women are social and they talk and they're raising babies, and every moment is a new moment, because what worked with a baby yesterday doesn't work with a toddler today, and that doesn't work with a teenager tomorrow. And so women are super fluid, and they have to be, and they're open, like literally their body's open, for this like driving masculine. So I got to experience that side also. And so for me, it's been like, how do you come in the middle and have both of those things?
Yeah, the extremes, and then there's the moderate that you're trying to get into, like into the middle of those two extremes.
Right. That's why
I feel like that's a lot of philosophy speaks into that.
Right. That's why I like role play so much, because when you're like dominatrix and sub, like there's a role that you're playing, right? Like, so I can play this like super controlling, powerful person, or I can play this, totally surrendered, submissive person. And then I can just be Heather, who's like, I don't know, however I'm going to show up in the moment, but when you've met both of these roles, all the stuff in the middle makes sense when I'm just being me.
Yeah, I guess I would take that and put it into terms that I understand. So I like to dance, and there's a lead and a follow, right. And then there's like, and the leads are the dominant, right. right? Follows are the submissive. And to be a great follow, you need to be really paying attention to your lead to have that connection where if your lead does one thing, the follows, he knows what or he or she knows what the follow is going to do, right. And then they can interact with each other. And those interactions can compound on each other because of like the trust in the relationship that you create on the dance floor.
Yeah, I love
and then there's
with
like,
you.
And then there's the switched position,
right,
where you can be on top, or like you can, well, I say like who's on top because who is the dominant one or who is the leader.
Right.
And no one knows who the leader will be until the leader the leader leads and the other person submits to that lead in the moment, and then can also take and be empowered to take charge and,
right.
and lead.
Right. That's why I like dancing with you so much, because I like you leading, but I also like leading. And so I'm able to surrender to your leading, but if I can't follow you or I don't know what's expected of me, what's so beautiful is the way you'll just like follow me, pick me up, and go back to leading. And it's like, it's the most fun I've ever had dancing ever, because I don't ever feel like I mess up.
Yeah, because that's not what dancing is. Dancing is not a form in which you can be like messing up. There shouldn't.
Right.
There's like a philosophy that I'm creating, or that has been created, that is much more like Bruce Lee in martial arts, where he was like, this is kung fu and this is how kung fu goes, right? But if you fucking hit somebody in the ankle or whatever and it's an illegal move, they're toast, they're dead, right? It's like, it doesn't make any sense that there is this form. And it's the same thing when I see salsa and stuff. I'm just like, it makes no sense that there is salsa. There should just be like the empowered person that you are, and you're leading or following or switching or whatever, but you have generated your own style that allows you to interact with the music.
Yeah, I mean, my body's responding to you so well right now. Everything you're saying is like, there's this like relaxation happening through my, like all the way through my whole body. That's like, there's a relief in what you're saying, right? And you could apply that to dancing or life or sex, like any of it, you know, having a partner or knowing inside of yourself, like there is no right or wrong way. It's like you choose how you want to move your body to the music. And if you're going to do it with a partner, you decide like who's in charge, you know, and that could go for life, or like life partnership relationships, or that could go for dancing, or that could go in the bedroom.
Well, why I like dancing so much is that the song ends and you get another partner. So there's never that moment in which you don't think that you know the right move anymore, because this is a new person and they'll have a lot more influence and interaction with you, where you can like find all that even ground. It's when you have that relationship through a long period of time where your moves stop being dynamic and start being
predictable
moves in which you move all the time. And I feel like that is like a hindrance or like a stumbling block for myself, because I like constantly want that new partner. And I want something that's novel, and I want something that is like really impactful, and which creates me and makes me dynamic as a person, but it doesn't really make me stable, because I want that like destabilization all the time.
I wonder if that comes from like expectations and attachment. Like if you had expectation, like you experience one partner, and then like you're saying, you know, you get to know their moves, so to speak. But because maybe it's because you think you know what their moves are, but maybe you don't. Like maybe they're just as dynamic, and maybe something different is going to happen, but because you have attachment to the expectation that it's going to show up in a specific way, it's boring, or you feel like you need some other
well, I don't think what I'm doing is the end result for me as a person, as like a human being, because I feel like I'm still in development.
Well, aren't we always?
Yeah, we're developing, right? And I always feel like a little half cooked, or I have been feeling half cooked because I feel like, I know things, but I don't know how to practice things, and I don't know how to practice things as diligently to have them as like mastery over those things,
Right.
So like I'm still in like this knowledge and new experiences phase of like my whole overarching like life, right? And the most comfortable relationships that I have are the dancing, or like that dynamic, or those, you know weekend or one night relationships, or those week or whatever it is, but that's like where my comfort lies, and then it gets uncomfortable when they mature, and and I'm still looking at that and working through that in my own life.
So have you ever sat with the discomfort?
Yeah. I guess I'm not like trying to defend my own perceived lack of being a stable partner. I'm just expressing it like you were saying in sex, and I was speaking into dancing, and we both met at relationships, and that they are reflections. They're all reflections of these of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was then looking at my own personal relationships in this moment to try to like ruminate the ideas that we're discussing now in real time, which is fantastic, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking a lot now. And I think there's a lot of benefit to those styles of like hobbies, like sex as a hobby, or as like as a learning experience, and using the relationships that you create, and like the learnings that and you use the act of sex as like a place to learn from.
Right. Yeah, and it's not even always about sex. Like what I'm learning about dominating, and what I'm learning about like the master-slave relationship even, right? So those are strong words that at first I had a lot of like resistance to, master and slave. Like I don't want anybody to feel like they're a slave, But at the same time, the more that I start to understand it, it's like, let's call it the master and slave because it's fun to look at, and it really isn't about sex, right? You like just you're weeding that out for a minute. So the master is this controller on this side and manages like the money, the business, like how are we going to grow money, what house are we going to buy, like personal growth, my personal growth, your personal growth, my personal health, your personal health, like the big decisions. And then the slave is the one who like actually, so the master then tells the slave, like, we're going to do this, then this one actually carries a lot of that little stuff out. And this one's the one making like the big decisions and interacting with, I don't know, like the bigger things. And then this one,
macro and micro.
yeah.
You have
and
a
this
macro
one is like handling
picture.
dishes and laundry and making sure that this one is supported, right? But this one is making sure that this one is supported. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding myself in a relationship like this right now. We're like very deliberately playing like this, where I'm choosing this role, which comes very naturally for me. It's very easy for me to make a lot of money, figure out how to make more money, handle the money, budget the money, save the money, invest the money. Like that's all very easy for me. And for this person, it's a pain in the ass, right? But for this person, like organizing and spreadsheets and technology and that kind of stuff is like easy. That's like bullshit for me. I hate that stuff, right? So like I'm able to support with these skills or gifts, and this person's able to support with these skills or gifts, and it actually makes this bunch of success happen. Does that make sense? And actually, like, I love being in this role. It's super easy for me, and this person's like a gigantic supporter, so it's super easy to be in this like surrendered position. And the more I allow myself to be in this control position, the more he allows himself to be in the surrender position, the more freedom actually we're both feeling, and the safer we're both feeling, and the healthier we're both feeling. Like, it's this crazy dynamic that I never ever thought would happen with words like master and slave. Like, I don't necessarily like those words, but I'm loving the role. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't like those. I don't like slave. That's a word that holds a negative connotation
Right.
in our country. I mean,
Absolutely.
in the world, right? It's
Absolutely.
it's like the fight against slavery is everywhere, right? It's abundant. It's all over the place.
Right.
And the role of the master, and like it is like it's like being a comedian. It's like using it's the truth, right? It's like truth, but there's a play on the truth.
Yes. Yeah.
It's poking at that truth, and it's turning it into a game, and then through that, maybe that's where healing comes from, because that's what humor heals, right?
Right. Well, and then the craziest part is, so then you take this master and this slave, right? And you have this, let's call it a dom and a sub, right? And this person's surrendered, this person's in charge of everything. And then you take it in the bedroom, and then you get a switch, right? Because now I feel super safe. I feel super provided for, taken care of. And then this one is like feeling super powerful, because it's like I'm providing all of this for my woman, so to speak, right? And then so then when you end up like sexually, it flips, because I'm like, take it, like whatever you want, because I've already gotten everything that I need, right? And so when you look at like men and women in marriages, right? Like, I coach people on this all the time. I end up with these women who are super upset because the man has been this like controller and been demanding of this one, but it doesn't have that like dom and sub reward and punishment system. Does that make sense? So like these women are over here literally feeling like slaves, but they haven't been, the reinforcement of like being provided for hasn't happened.
Now I hear this term a lot, which is like toxic masculinity, right? Toxic.
Okay, yeah, let's get into this. This is great. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, let's get into this topic. This is one of my favorites.
Well, I've said it, and other people have said it to me, and it's been discussed, but I don't really know. Do you have a definition? Can you define?
Yeah.
that?
So this is what is happening from my perspective. We are a shame culture. Okay. So the difference between toxic shame and shame. So toxic shame is, I have feelings and I'm ashamed of them. Shame is, I just stole a candy bar from a store and I'm a bad person, right? That's healthy shame. That actually keeps people behaving in a cultural situation. But when we have a culture of like, big boys don't cry, or a culture of like, men provide financially and women should be cared for, blah, 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 right? Women are not taught to like allow men to feel and cry, and men don't feel like they have the space to have feelings or cry or have problems at all. They feel like they need to solve all the problems, which in reality, like if you take toxic shame out, like that's all bullshit. Like a woman is a super warm nest. She wants, like a healthy woman wants a man to like cuddle up inside of her and lose his shit, right? But there's not very many women willing to hold a man through his pain. And there aren't many men willing to express that discomfort and that pain and their shame, or they're not good enough. Brene Brown talks about the biggest shame points for men and women. For men, it's feeling like a failure. And for women, it's like body image and the mother thing, you know, like it doesn't matter if you're 20 with or without kids or 40 with or without kids, like there's mom shame and there's body shame. But for men, like if you're, you know, if you're failing at anything, like it's shameful. And like try to define failing. Like if you want to be successful in business, you have to fail. Like that's actually the definition of how to become successful. Like you have to fail and fail and fail and fail and figure out what's not working and then make it work. But when you get caught with these men who are so terrified of failing and unwilling to admit that they failed, then they can't get support from anybody because they feel so ashamed. So what do you're going to end up with an angry dog, basically, that just runs around biting everybody. And that's what happens. I think that whole toxic masculinity, I think it's also, there's toxic women also who are nagging and berating and expecting, you know, basically to be treated like hookers or prostitutes. So why those two fit together? You know, there's these men who just don't have any feelings, and then there's these women who think that they're basically supposed to be prostitutes. You know, just give me your money and take me out, pay for me, and then you can have sex with me. And then they control the relationship with sex, right? And they end up together with these men who are like these controlled, non-feeling, aggressive men. And there you have an abusive relationship. Like it's a pretty, they're attracted to each other out of that unwillingness to experience shame. That's my definition.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. There's a train. This is happening. We are outside, obviously, on the
train on the island.
There's a train on the island. We're a successful island. This is the islandoftaboo.com. If you guys don't know it, then you should go there. That's where we host all of these videos. Anyways, back. Don't Tell My Mom is the web series that you're listening to currently. It's fun to say. I like saying those things.
Do we have like 2 minutes for me to tell a hilarious story about Don't Tell Your Mom?
Of course I do. Of course I have 2 minutes.
Okay. So we're at lunch. I have 2 teenage boys, and they love to play pranks on me, especially having to do with sex, because I'm open about it. So they say, can you imagine picking up a salt shaker and dumping it in your mouth and tasting the way the salt feels or tastes? And I was like, yeah, I could imagine that. And they're like, go ahead and try. Have you seen this? So I take my salt shaker and I go like this. And as I'm going, I realize my teenage boys, what they have me doing, right? And I'm like, I cannot believe that you just made me do that. And they laughed so hard.
What a crazy family dynamic that you have currently.
It's hysterical. It was so embarrassing. They said they made their dad and his wife do it too. It's just hysterical.
Ridiculous.
So ridiculous.
So what you're saying is soon enough, there are going to be thousands of videos of people doing this. Or
evidently everyone in their school already knows about it. They know not to do it. So this is already wildfire, you know.
It's a fire.
Spread,
You got caught up in the blaze of virility.
Like, what the hell? But they laughed so hard they couldn't breathe. It was a good laugh.
Well, I'm glad you get to be there for your children like that, and be a person in which they can express that? I don't know. How do you take that as like a high-minded ideal?
Well, they don't experience shame around sex.
Well, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Back we go
Right.
to the shame.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was reflecting on those words when you were saying them, and finding the residency and like the shame of failure.
Yeah.
And I have a lot, or I have money shame. It's in there. It's all over
Yeah.
me, and it's what I'm dealing with currently, while
Yeah.
I am in the midst of creating this amazing and uplifting show, and with its great content. Um, and it does sort of. It's painful when I go to express that shame, and when I go to release it into someone who's supporting me, and immediately be rejected, and say like, I'm sorry that I brought it up. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry that I brought this up, but let me, tell you all about the things that make me feel bad, and so you can take that, but
Right.
I don't get to. And
Right.
I do feel like that sometimes, where it's like,
Yeah.
completely fine for the person I'm in a relationship with to express their feelings towards me, and that their feelings are valid, right? They have
Right.
valid feelings that are inside of them, and they're expressing them to me. And when I go to express my feelings, there's like no ability to handle
Right.
it, and try to shut that down. And I go to my family with it, and they try to shut it down, or they uh,
Right.
give like passing advice, kind of like,
Right.
well, if I had to do it, I'd do it this way. Give me some 2020 hindsight over here. Thank you. Makes me feel so much better when I should have never done that 10 years ago.
Right.
That's why I'm unsuccessful now. It's like such BS.
Right.
And but my body loves it. Like,
Oh.
it loves it. It like feeds on the shame, and that like sort of, I'm a piece of shit and I shall always be a piece of shit. And it's like, yes, that's what resonates with me. And then when somebody's like, you're amazing, you're like, no, like it pass off this. You don't want to boast, right? You're like, so you take out all the power from it.
Right. It's also a part of our shame culture.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because God forbid you be fine. What does that make me?
Uh-huh.
You know?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I mean, I've experienced this with you. I mean, I'm experiencing you being vulnerable right now, and I think it's a hard thing to be able to admit that, especially on a show like this. And I've experienced you be like really vulnerable before,
Oh, yeah.
and to be able to like receive that. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's sad to me that people aren't able to do that, because that's where love happens. Like that's where intimacy and connection happens.
When love happens. What do you have, like, a definition for love? This is a complex,
Love is a
idea.
complex thing.
It's,
It is. I'm going to say that love is the only truth, the only real thing. And everything else is fear and the ego trying to survive. And I think that it's trying to survive two things. One, all relationships end. Either I leave, you leave, I die, or you die. And two, nobody's getting out of here alive. We're all dying. And I think the ego is fighting against these two things all of the time. And the opposite of that is love. That's really the
so
answer that I
love
have.
is the acceptance of ending.
Yeah, love is knowing that there is no beginning, middle, or end.
Ah,
Love is knowing that there's no attachment, that you're not separate from me and I'm not separate from you and I'm not separate from the creator or the creation.
okay.
That you've just happened to have experiences in your human form that I may or may not have had, and I may or may not interpret the same way as you do. But that doesn't mean that I can't sit with you in it.
I'm letting that resonate with me. my definition of love is unconditional acceptance. Um, so like
I can align.
yeah, I can like I could
And forgiveness and understanding and presence and connection and vulnerability and
yeah, there's
intimacy.
just so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a difficult one to try to pin down
Mm-hmm.
because like when I say I love you, I want it to mean something to me. I want it to like
Is that the attachment?
maybe I don't know. I want it to
Is it the ego?
yeah, it's like I want. I feel like I'm defending myself against the duality between someone saying that they love you and then like causing you pain. And
So can someone else actually cause you pain, or are those just your own attack thoughts?
Well, I guess that's where the spanking comes in sometimes. Try to change. Try
That's
to flip the
temporary. So
yeah. You
temporary the
try to
spanking, though,
flip the script on that one.
Well, right, but the spanking is temporary. Like, right, like
Yeah,
if I slap like this, it's like that's a very temporary pain. Now, if I sit and think about this all day long, that now I'm torturing and suffering, and now there's the pain that I think you're describing.
yeah. Well, when you're mentally frail as like a young person, I think that those pains that are in a momentary and fleeting pain is something that you ruminate on to define yourself.
Well, and the brain is from age 0 to 6. The brain is learning in a non-cognitive way, but just an emotional way, how to react to the world and where should I do fight, flight, or freeze, and where do I feel safe, right? So like in an environment like mine, there was a lot of fight, flight, and freezing, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so to rewire my brain to understand that those people were operating out of toxic shame all the time, and that they did not know how to love. And that has nothing to do with me being lovable or being able to love.
Mm-hmm. So you're taking examples from your past mentally, like you're capturing instances, and then you're like defusing them.
Yeah.
By saying that they're operating from toxic shame, and then you use some empathy on top of that, and like and
Compassion, forgiveness,
compassion and forgiveness,
love.
yeah, and then you like, wash off that area in which like is staining you currently. I mean,
right.
Right.
So like for instance, right, when my boyfriend recently like took off and I didn't know why. Okay. Mm-hmm. That brings up a whole bunch of abandonment issues for me. Okay, so what's the truth? Did he abandon me? No. I was attached to future memories. I was attached to past memories. I was attached to like evidence that he was going to stay and remain, right? Also at being attached to, as a child, thinking that I should have gotten some kind of attention that the people that raised me were incapable of giving me. And I didn't ask for, right? So it's like radical responsibility.
And being responsible gives you power to act. So like
yeah, but it's not even acting, it's really forgiveness of the self, right? There's no action. I'm not behaving in any, I mean, if I'm behaving in any way, the way that I'm behaving in is this world is created for me. Let me enjoy it and have pleasure from it.
mm-hmm.
Let me find the beautiful, pleasurable parts instead of focusing on that I think somebody did something painful to me, because it's just a thought pattern. because I could go outside and smell the flowers that are blooming, and I could pet my cat, and I could have an orgasm, right? And those are all pleasurable things. I could have a cup of tea, I could eat some chocolate, like I could do all kinds of pleasurable things. Or I could sit and ruminate and stew about my upbringing, or that this person that I thought loved me doesn't, or right? But it's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
choice. It's my life, and it's my freedom. It's my pleasure, you know? It's my power. Like, I get to keep all of that because I can. It's a choice.
Yeah. It is a choice. It is a choice. And I think that there are people, and there is like myself, who see like that choice is an option or may not be an option. It's like,
yeah, no, I was there. I had like debilitating anxiety with panic attacks like for half my life. So like I understand thinking that you're not in charge, or that you're trapped somehow, and that you're not free, and that you don't have power, and that you're not lovable. And like I understand that. Absolutely. I've lived it.
yeah. It's getting super deep here on the show. Getting some core. We're getting into some core work right now because
It happens.
we both play hard.
We do.
And look at the things that cause us pain.
And I'm not scared of it. I don't think you are either.
I don't. I think that I have fear, and that is there. It's always there, and I haven't like gotten to a point where I can evade fear.
Okay.
But I act in a way in which people don't see that I have fear.
Look at you, so vulnerable. I love you, Alex.
I like went out. I'm like at motorcycle week right now, and it's freezing up here in New Hampshire. You have no idea. It's like the coldest day in Florida happened last night, and I'm wearing my furry jacket and walking around, and everyone's in jeans and black tops, black jackets, black shirts, whatever. I don't own jeans. I don't own a black. I have a black t-shirt. It's the blackest thing I have. And I'm fucking sitting there and I am terrified. It's scary to be that guy.
Colorful.
But I wanted to be that guy because I wanted to listen to the fucking music that's down the street from me. And I don't want other people, or the idea that I'm like a fucking weirdo, to stop me from enjoying myself. And I go down there and people bought me some drinks, and
Look at that.
And fucking I was just there, man. I was the guy in the furry jacket. Either they loved me and they tried to do everything they could do in their power to support and protect me, or they hated me. And the worst thing I got for that, a couple of things. Sort of got thrown out of a bathroom, and and people badmouth me like all over the place. It's like, there's the guy in the furry jacket. But you know, that's the role of an artist. It is not to make people feel joy. It's to make people feel.
Exactly.
It's just to have a feeling, because
that's my job too. I want you to fucking feel. Because people have anxiety and depression, and they live these miserable, terrible lives because
they're everywhere else than in the present.
Feel. Exactly.
They're everywhere else than in the present. And if I can bring someone presence by being scared out of my mind and being vulnerable and just like wanting to do the things that I want to do, and in turn, people like,
you give people permission, Alex.
Yeah.
You know, walking out there like that gives people permission to not wear jeans and a black shirt.
Yeah. It's weird. It's like weird how everyone looks exactly the same out here to me. Yeah. It's like, it's like weird. Scarily weird. And like, and like, there are still this like freedom. Like I see motorcycles and I see like the motorcycle culture as like indomitable freedom in our country to do whatever the fuck you want, to live in a tent and ride around on a motorcycle and not have any rules and drift from place to place. That was my goddamn life. All right. I lived that life and now I'm here, right? And I'm expressing myself. And these fucking people out there are buying patches and paying dues to be in a club and oiling their fucking beards. Shiny ass beards out there. I'm telling you right now. These are the people who are supposed to be the most free people in like the country are just posing.
Right.
And there are some people that are so legit out there that I would never look at them the wrong way. And there are some people that I just can't help but be like, you're just in a gang. Like, this is not the point. You're missing the point. And
but you could say that about any group. You could say that about the goth teenagers. You could say it about the super spiritual people. Like,
I'm just saying, I was fearful for not fitting in.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like sort of raging.
No, but I mean, it makes sense because, you know, when it comes to survival, right? The two things, relationships or death, right? Mm-hmm. For 10 million years, if you got kicked out of the tribe, you would die because you'd be living in the forest alone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, belonging like literally kicks up the amygdala and makes you go, holy shit, I'm going to die. Even though like, so what if you don't fit in with the bikers? It actually doesn't matter, but your brain is telling you, you're going to die. If you get kicked out, you'll die.
Yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. It's like an interesting place to come from. It's a little scary sometimes.
Also, rejection in your brain, like if somebody rejects you, they've monitored it with, you know, probes or whatever. It's actually as painful as like having your arm cut off. So the same pain that happens when you have your arm removed is the same pain that happens when you get rejected.
Wow. I wonder how they set that experiment up.
I have no idea.
Hopefully. It saved someone's life, hopefully. I had to not the arm. I can only see it now.
It's only a flesh wound.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's like it's cancerous, sir. We're gonna put probes on your brain, and we're gonna monitor this to see how painful it is. Okay.
It's not as painful as childbirth. That's all I know.
Not as painful. So the scale is like
childbirth, arm cut off,
and then right next to it, rejection, and then there's and finally down
getting spanked
down at the bottom.
No.
There's
getting spanked.
Yeah, getting spanked. then it starts. Then that's the blur of the line, and then it starts pleasurable again. That's being pleasant.
That's fantastic. Well, we've come full circle.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody's kink out there is like, man, I wish I had no arms. Oh, these arms are just tearing me down, tearing down.
I love licking stumps, you know.
Sure. This show has taught me anything. There is a kink for everything.
There is definitely a kink for everything.
Well, we've been chatting, and I've been having a wonderful time. I'm going to ask you one question. I haven't asked you any questions, I don't think. Or I probably did. I did, but I didn't feel like I was asking questions. I felt like we were having a conversation.
Okay, ask me a question.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Can you remember the first experience that you had where you realized that you were a sexual being?
I was 8. I was 8.
You were 8.
Mm-hmm. You want to hear about it?
Yeah, I do. I want to hear about it because I
found my grandfather's like ginormous like stacks of Playboy magazines that he'd been saving for like, I don't know, 50 years. And I was going through them and having such a great time. And I convinced my sister to go through them with me. We were in the basement of my grandparents' house, and my mom came down and found me. And they're pictures of women, you know, they're Playboys. And she says, "Do you like this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "No, it's bad and wrong." And like, I got punished for it. And so ever since, well, for many years, I denied my attraction to women because of that experience. Oh no, the internet.
Oh no. Well, it's good that it's the end. Wrapping it up. Well, Heather seems to have frozen. My name is Alexander Schettino. This is Shh, Don't Tell My Mom, a web series and podcast. I hope you like, share, subscribe. Visit me on the islandoftaboo.com. Thank you so much and have fun, people.